Welcome back to another episode of Rational Discourse Weekly. This is episode 27, filmed on Monday, July 8th, 2013. I'm William Garrison.
And I'm Michael Aune.
And we talk a little bit this week about justice.
In the afterlife and just sort of our thoughts on the whole idea of heaven and hell and are those actually good ideas. And we may be a little bit critical and sarcastic, so I hope you enjoy.
So I heard you talked with Andrew a little bit about this, justice, and how I guess the non-religious versus the religious deal with like the ideas of good and evil and how to balance those in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, it came up jokingly, so this was not a serious discussion. We were being fairly sarcastic, but it does touch on...
This is the serious discussion.
It's only serious because we have no Twizzlers this time.
Yeah.
If we had Twizzlers, damn it, we'd be all sort. We have Ovaltine. That's not nearly as
more Ovaltine, please. I haven't seen the commercials, but I know that tagline exists. So, anyway, this is the serious conversation.
There you go. Now that we've gotten Ovaltine out of the way, we can focus. And yeah. So anyway, we sort of made the joke about how Oh, sorry. It started off semi-seriously and then it went funny. So it was the idea that why would you live a just life? And it's sort of like the inverse of Pascal's wager, which states, if you're not familiar with it, basically that shouldn't you believe in God or live according to his rules on the off chance, let's say, that he does exist? Because if you are wrong and you have lived a bad life, then you will pay eternally. If you are wrong
and you've lived a good life, if there was a God, then
you gain everything. And if you are just wrong, I mean, if you're right, it doesn't matter what type of life you lived. Well, then ultimately, no harm, no foul. You got away with it.
Yeah.
But basically, the idea is: are you willing to wager an eternity of either bliss or torment against just sort of living a mediocre life on the off chance that you're wrong?
No, quick.
Right,
we might have covered this in the past, but just quickly to touch on it, the reason why Pascal's wager is BS is because belief in a god, religion, that sort of thing is active.
No, it's passive. You cannot choose to believe things.
Oh no! What I mean by that is you can't just say you believe in something. Like
that's what I mean. You can say the words.
I guess maybe as passive as the...
Yeah, but it's like emotions.
Yeah.
You can't choose to be angry, in a sense. Like, if you actually are legitimately feeling a passion,
yeah.
You look at passion, passive, like they share the same root word. Something that comes over you. You don't have a choice. It just happens.
So, if you didn't genuinely believe in a god, but you said you believed in a god, and if there were a god that was all-knowing and all-powerful, then he would know that you don't actually believe in him.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't matter what you tell
legitimate
people.
Belief is actually a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Which, now to be fair, Catholicism, which Pascal, if I'm not mistaken, was a Catholic, is a little less strict on that because they do take into account good works. And so, like, if you make the effort to believe or to live according to God's code, in theory, that could help you. Whereas, like, Protestants, belief is really the only thing that matters. Protestantism almost universally rejects the idea that works matter. So it doesn't matter what sort of life you live, which is why you can be a serial killer and, find Jesus, right? Literally on the electric chair. And according to those theologies, you will get into heaven. That you took Jesus into your heart and asked for forgiveness, and all sins were washed away. So
yeah.
But so that comes back to justice. First of all, that's unjust bullshit. Second of all, the idea was, let's say the inverse. We're going the inverse of Pascal's wager. We'll call it Aune's wager.
I like it.
Screw it. I should have something named after me. Why not? I feel that way. That's good. So anyway, so I live a just life, and the idea is, if God is just, and that is the difference. You're sort of assuming God is just. If God is just and I lived a just life, but did not believe, a just God would acknowledge my justness and at least not punish me. and presumably reward me for being just in the way that he is just. If those are things that are valued on the metaphysical scale there, where God says, this is important, I am this way, you are also this way, and although your motivation wasn't me, just is just. Enjoy.
Right.
Heaven. The opposite is, okay, you're a just person who doesn't believe, and there is no God. You still lived a just life. Fair enough. It still mattered to the people whom you're around, even if there's no ultimate sort of meaning associated to it. You know, only good things can be said of you. So there's no negative to that. So those are two positives. And then the third option is, well, what if God's unjust? In which case, it really doesn't matter what you do. Because if you're a just person, there's nothing that says an unjust God wouldn't be, you know, a little and just send your ass to hell for shit.
Yeah, maybe he has a hell heaven lottery.
Yeah, it's
like,
completely
scratch
random.
off a ticket, whatever.
You know, it just doesn't matter. God does what he wants. Like he rolls. Yeah, he plays craps with your soul and like, oh, I lost, so sorry. Satan gets to take you.
Right.
Now, obviously, these are all sort of contingent on sort of Christian conceptions of heaven and hell, but to me, it was just interesting, the idea that, to me, it wasn't, like, belief is sort of nebulous, and to me, it's sort of meaningless. Okay, you believe something. You can be a terrible person, it means nothing. But the idea that justice, to me, was more important than the belief in God, or what God was. If God's not God, or if God is not just, what does it matter? Ultimately, and to quote the movie Constantine, roughly, I'm going to paraphrase the movie Constantine, you know, we're just ants and God's a kid with a magnifying glass. Like, he characterizes God at one point because he feels that Satan and God are just playing a sort of twisted game with humans as chess pieces. Like, the souls of mankind are being fought over, and the well-being of humanity is not really at anyone's true core interest. It's just a game between those two, and we're the pieces with which the game is played. That would be an unjust conception of God, and yet it's perfectly compatible in many ways with a lot of theologies that are out there. And so, to me, that's a fundamentally disturbing thought, that you could accept a being over who would rule over you and dictate your eternal life, assuming you have one, and he could be an asshole. You could just not care. You could be the nicest person in the world. You could save puppies all day, every day, and feed homeless kids. And that God, you get up there, and God goes, "You have stupid hair," and into the eternal hellfire you go, because God doesn't need to be just. Or, almost worse, you know, because God gets to make the rules, assuming that he did create all of this, he just sort of, he's not bound to anything. He is the lawmaker, therefore he's not bound to the laws.
Well, I guess
to dictate the loopholes to which he can be exempt.
Because he wouldn't be human. Maybe he's detached from humanity. He doesn't have the same moral code and system, and
maybe xanthids or something, some alien species I just threw up out of the top of my head. Maybe those are his favorites. If humanity was like his first pet project, we were the test batch, and we just did not come out right. Oops. And he's completely abandoned us, which seems likely. If he does exist, I don't think he's involved.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm cool with that. But now he's off on this other half of the universe, doing his creative thing, and he's got it right this time. He doesn't want those guys that, you know, that's like his ex-girlfriend showing up to the party with his new girlfriend there. He doesn't want that in heaven. That's awkward. Hey, anyway, I've moved on, and she's better than you. And
yeah, fast track to hell or limbo, whatever. You want.
I mean, that would be sad. I don't want humanity to be the awkward ex-girlfriend of God in heaven for an eternal cocktail party from which there is no escape, except for eternal damnation. Because apparently limbo's not much of an option, because the Catholic Church, I think, got rid of limbo.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh.
From what I understand, Pope John Paul II said that, no, there really wasn't much of a theological basis for it in Scripture, and so maybe there aren't people slaving away to try and burn off their sins before they're allowed entrance into heaven.
Yeah. I guess it's all weird because I don't believe in any of it, so it's like...
It is a little strange
I think when
you say it.
The invention, and I will use that word invention, the invention of heaven, hell, only made sense just because of how we as humans, like, we only see in those polar opposites of good and evil. Like, we don't really see the shades in between.
I think we are prone to wanting to say there are like absolute conceptions of good and right and all this stuff. Now, of course,
everyone lives in the middle.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't believe in a heaven or hell, but heaven and hell are those extremes that I think...
He does believe in limbo, though, which is why that last little section just blew his mind.
I believe if limbo exists, it's in space somewhere that literally you're trapped in some time
limbo contest
time
for eternity. It's like a limbo, so you go under the limbo rail,
right.
But it's like it's a two-dimensional plane that just never ends. So you just keep going, and there's no stopping it.
And it hurts.
Like your back is so really achy after a while.
So it's its own hell.
That is the worst sort of stuck in limbo. But that's an actual limbo from which you cannot escape. That is awesome. I'm very happy I had that thought.
But
also, I keep imagining Hermes from Futurama, because why the hell not?
I don't know.
He's the Jamaican man.
Oh, okay.
And he was a
I haven't seen
he
much
was an
Futurama.
Olympic limboer, which is
okay.
why. Yeah. Until some kid emulating him tried to go. The bar was like, here's the ground, here's the bar, and so the kid, he goes, no, your spine can't handle it, and you just hear a horrible crack, and then the kid's like broken on the ground.
So he no longer limbos?
He gave up limboing at that point.
Okay.
He's done it a few times.
I haven't seen that.
Because I believe more than once, at least once, but I believe more than once, limboing has basically been a life or death situation.
Right, like you have to limbo underneath this door to stop the machinery or something
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, it was good stuff.
So going back to the human concepts of heaven and hell, I think.
Well, let's just point out they're superhuman. They're like the ultimate wish fulfillment. Like, I want me and mine to be happy forever, and I want to be with them.
And I want Hitler to be in hell.
Yeah, I want that guy who ran over my cat burned for eternity for his evil ways. I'm assuming it was intentional.
Yeah, the wish fulfillment is pretty obvious to me with hell, or with heaven, sorry, because we as humans seem to have a hard time of dealing with death.
Well, I mean,
it's the same reason why conversations like with funeral homes are so awkward. They can sell you $10,000 caskets for your dead loved one. Like, yes, they're my loved one, but they're dead. Why do they deserve a $10,000? Because the conversation of death is awkward. And no offense, the funeral homes are a business. They're trying to make money out of the death.
You're saying that some people profit off of death?
Yes.
Never.
So we have a hard time dealing with death. And so the obvious way for religion to swoop in and be like, well, we have an answer for that. There's another life.
Well, now, to be fair, I believe that religion might actually be a response to it as much as it is something that then takes advantage. I mean, like, I don't think like, religion was a thing and then came in and was like, we can totally exploit these assholes.
No.
They don't know anything.
No, we've talked about it before.
They live in huts.
Religion having the answer to everything that didn't previously have an answer. Because before religion...
Well, religion was the answer that was, like, put forward. Like,
right.
Oh, yeah, he's dead, but it looks like he's still here.
Yeah.
Like he's gone. So maybe there's a part of him that we can't see or touch that left. Which is why the body still looks completely normal. I'm assuming this guy wasn't mauled by a bear or something, where it was pretty obvious that...
Oh, yeah, he's dead. he's so dead.
Jimmy's dead, guys. Jimmy the caveman.
He even feels dead.
Not yet. He looks so dead. No, but, so you get that idea that, it's a projection sort of onto the world, and religion both is fed by and feeds back into it by providing an answer, especially once it gets codified. Once this is how it is.
Yeah.
As opposed to, maybe there's a spirit. Well, if there's a spirit, where do spirits live? Oh, well, they must live somewhere. They must go somewhere. And so you get sort of in a realm where things persist, and then that, in one way or another, becomes an afterlife, whether it's a more Grecian Hades, where it's just sort of like hanging out underground. It's not particularly nice. It's not the Elysian Fields where heroes go. But it's, there's also that heaven on the opposite end of the scale where it's supposed to be perfect bliss and, happiness for eternity. So, I mean, there are different ways that religion has used those concepts. So I think there are some certain motivating concepts about the persistence of identity after death, that people are somehow still out there. which feeds into the wish fulfillment of we want them to be out there. And then one day we hope that we are also out there with them. And so, that whole afterlife thing, I think it's founded on that idea. Those core concepts of, one, it made sort of a sense, like, how is this dead body still the same but different? Well, you postulate something that's not physical that left, and therefore sort of the soul naturally arises. Like, people were actually sort of being smart. They saw a thing.
If you say so.
I'm saying smart without... They were making an educated guess.
Yeah,
They looked at the thing and said, well, this sort of makes sense as an answer. Now, they could be wrong, but then you get these sort of core concepts which seem to undergird most conceptions of an afterlife in one way or another. Now, the particulars of the afterlife vary. And to me, it's only when you get to the more formalized, more recent, like Abrahamic religions, where there is the idea of eternal, either bliss or punishment, that the whole justice concept really comes back into play. Because interestingly, like in Hades, I mean, there was going to be an end of the world. Like, everything would be unmade. So even there, your punishment wasn't eternal. You might be punished for thousands and thousands of years, but eventually, everything was going to get wiped clean.
Yeah, you were still, in some way, like, Hades was still tied to Earth. Like,
Well, it was very much underground.
right.
You could
It
go
was,
there.
and-
People
and-
did.
And I think just talking about Hades, like, that's part of the reason why people, like, point down for hell and point up for heaven. There's still that...
Yeah.
There's that need for us to, even for concepts that aren't of this world, to tie them to this world in some way.
Yeah.
And
that
that's...
makes sense. Like, you look at the sky and the stars, and it's ethereal, and it seems perfect and eternal, and especially the Greeks, they were all
and
about
beautiful.
that.
People don't look at the inside of the earth and think it's beautiful.
You know what's
when
great? Dirt.
Rocks and lava.
Dirt and worms.
Fire.
And sometimes there's that hot red stuff that comes out and consumes everything and all of our loved ones. Let's go down there for eternity. No, that's a terrible idea. But anyway, so those older sort of versions of the afterlife, to me, were not unjust in the same way that you get to the modern conceptions where everything is eternalized. And that, to me, like, I don't think there is anything you can do for which you deserve eternal damnation. Anything. Hitler himself does not deserve eternal damnation. Now, does he deserve 6.5 billion years of damnation? Sure. But the idea of there's no way to actually give penance and come to a realization, to never give people an out to actually come to Jesus or whatever you want to say, that seems to me to be unjust. Because you're saying for a finite crime, no matter how large or small. I mean, yeah, Hitler's like the easy answer. Oh, you want Hitler to get to heaven? Well, yes and no. I want there to be an option.
Right.
Like, I want there to be a way. Because what about the guy who kills one person? Sure, like, no one likes that guy. No one thinks he's the greatest. But, like, one life, on the scale of how many people have been killed by people, fairly small. You're saying that that's an eternal damnation for a crime that, on the scope of things, is sort of small.
Right.
Not that a life is a small thing to lose, but let's put it in perspective a little bit. So 1 million years, you're saying that guy suffered for 1 million years. The person he killed suffered for 5 minutes. Was it horrible? Yes. Is he a bad person, or was he a bad person? Yeah. But then to be punished eternally, infinitely, for a finite crime, I don't think there's any justification for that at all. And when it's phrased like that, it's really hard for people, I think, to say it wholeheartedly. They might go, sure, yeah, he totally deserves it because that's God's will.
Or not even that. Let's take a step back and talk about being atheists. Because in some sects of Christianity...
Wait, you're an atheist?
Absolutely. In some...
Dude, we have so much to talk about. We should podcast.
Some Christians believe that not believing in a God talks about you talked about the Catholicism being okay if you do good things in life versus...
There's at least the potential they've discussed about the out, where, now, to be fair, the general caveat is, if you know of Jesus, it's not an out. But it just seems that they at least have some sort of wiggle room in some way.
But to say that just because someone who was allegedly given free will and free thought by this creator not believe in him because of lack of evidence, spending life or eternity in hell, not life.
Yeah.
Again, that just seems absolutely batshit crazy.
Yeah. And that to me is the idea of, I don't want, almost nothing else matters to me except for a just God. And to me, a just God is one with which I will hopefully be cool, because I think that I've led a fairly just life. I've tried to do, good with and for my fellow man. I have tried to decrease the amount of suffering, at least with those around me. I've not gone out of my way to be an asshole. Yeah, I haven't believed certain precepts, or I haven't, partaken in certain rituals, but ignoring the fact that who knows if we even got the religion right. By the way, it was Buddhism. You chose wrong. Sorry. I would think that all that really matters is that God knows you tried to be a decent human being. And if it's that point, then being an atheist isn't really a gamble at all. It's not a negative. I live my life according to an idea. Actually, I don't live it according to an idea. I live it, and I have this idea that is also a part of who I am. I don't live it according to atheism.
We live as atheists because we're using the information we were given. If religion was so obvious, or if Christianity was so obvious to us, then we would be having a completely different podcast and conversation right now. So,
very true, very, very true.
Anywho, well, we believe in justice and good and evil, but we don't believe it's based in religion or an idea that's exclusive to religion. We think it's derived from humanity, and it's an innate part of us.
I think it's something we strive for. We're never perfectly just as a society or individuals, but it doesn't mean that having an ideal, to me the ideal is more important than a God who mandates it. If justice is what matters, I don't need God to be just. I don't care if God exists. I just need justice to be important. And if there is no higher plane and it's important to us here, great. Let's be just. Let's be good to one another. If there is a higher plane and it's important, sweet, we should basically get grandfathered in. Well, it worked when it was just humanity, and now that we've added God to the equation, well, we'll slip you in under the just clause, and you'll be good to go. So, that to me is the more important aspect to the whole idea of God and the afterlife. I think an unjust afterlife is irreconcilable with any conception of goodness. The end. Not really. A couple things. One, we are still not on Facebook, per our mandate to never be on Facebook. But 37G is on Facebook now, because we have been told, and it does make sense, that if we want people to follow us and actually pay attention to us, we should probably be on Facebook, being the largest social media network in the world. Blah blah blah. So anyway, we're on Facebook now. You can find us at facebook.com/37G podcasts. The G and the P must be capitalized. We will maybe link to that. We always say we're going to link to things. We never do. But in any case, if you go to the website, 37g.tv, there will be a Facebook little radio button. You can click on that. Should be links at the bottom of our articles now to the page. So like us, follow us, whatever it is people do on Facebook. It's been years. I'm rusty. Outside of that, new article should have been up a couple days ago. We'll be back next week. And unless you've got news, I think that covers pretty much everything.
Thanks for joining in again.
Yeah. See you next week.